couple minutes.
Mm-hmm.
All those things shipped and incorporated. So we'll have a new one built next week to present to board to sign next week. As soon as I get it, I'll send it to you. He took everything.
Sounds good.
He actually figured out how much it costs per acre per, each one piece, so he can tell you how much that would do. He'll be buying that 20 out. Good.
Makes sense.
Yep.
All right, thanks, guys.
Did we have a meeting today or something, or? Oh, okay.
It's 3:30.
Well, it's past that.
Matthew. Jeremy, we're both gone.
Whoa. There, that's better.
Call meeting to order. Start with the pledge allegiance, followed by a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please join us for a moment of silence. All right, thank you. All right, we're going to start off first round of citizen concerns. Anything that is to be heard that is not on the agenda? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to the approval of the agenda. I am going to move that with the, we're going to move, where's our discussion with medical examiner? So that's 14A4. We're going to just discuss that right after the consent agenda. Is that correct? Is she here? Well, we may move that up then if she shows up, because she had somewhere she had to be. So I will move that as the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Moving on to the consent agenda, items 3 through 9 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 3, approval of the minutes of the January 25th, 2022 meeting. Item 4, approval of claims. Item 5, from County Treasurer, received the Treasurer's semi-annual report. Item 6, from the Auditor, received County Recorder's report of fees collected. Item 7, from Board Administration, A is approval of resolution for tax suspension for NA, and 7B is approval of resolution of tax suspension for BM. Item 8, from Building Services, approval of items to be auctioned per personnel property disposition policy. Item 9, from Human Resources, A is approval of memorandum of personnel transactions, and B is approval of retiree requests to remain on county health and dental insurance plans. And that ends the consent agenda. I'll move that.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. Any discussion on the consent agenda? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That passes 5-0. Well, she's not here, so we'll just leave her at the appointed time. We'll go on to item 11, juvenile detention. Ryan Weber, approval of contract with Mercy One for nursing services. Is a major change on this here, or is it about the same?
Exactly the same, but the rate. Mr. Chair, is there not a set time?
Oh,
Yeah, I was wondering what was going on.
well, we're not quite there, but,
This will take 2 seconds.
yeah.
Last week, I needed a little more money for my nursing services because we needed a new contract. We've checked out the contract and it looks good. I just need your approval on it.
All right. I'll move the contract.
Second for discussion.
All right, any other discussion on the item 11? Go ahead.
Just had one question. Did we look at any other alternatives? It seems like it's a pretty big rate increase, and
It
do you know
is,
what
but-
that financial impact is total?
They haven't gave us a rate increase since like 2002, so there hasn't been one for a long time. We have a nurse that we've had for 20 years that we'd like to keep using. It's worked really well for us. I don't know what other organizations would do something like that besides like maybe Tri-State Nursing or something like that. But for $56, I figure you can't even get your car worked on for that for an hour. So.
Do you know what your financial impact is total
It was
throughout?
going to be, when I figured it out, it was going to be less than 1,000, so I added $1,000 to the budget
Okay.
last week.
Okay.
Any other questions on it? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on, we have our 3:35 set time from Board Administration. 10A, public hearing and sale of property, parcel known as 1601 Myrtle Street. Anybody to speak for or against selling the property? All right, seeing none, I'll move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. We are now in the sale of that property. If you would like to make a bid on 1601 Myrtle Street, please come up, state your name and your bid.
Robert Barley. I reside at 1603 Myrtle. I'd like to make bid on the property. So,
What dollar amount?
Would you like to do the minimum bid?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
thank
was
you.
trying to remember what it was. I couldn't.
Okay, what's your last name again?
Barley.
Farley, okay. Anybody else? You got somebody behind you, just, you can stay right there in case you gotta,
John Weber. I'd like to put a bid in for 1,000.
okay. Would you like to bid as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, 1,200?
Yeah.
Do 13,
Okay. 15?
16.
All right. I'll move, anyone else out there? I'll move the sale to Robert Farley in the amount of 1,700.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to our, we're there, 3:37 set time, which is 10B, public hearing and sale of property, parcel 3rd and Main. So now we're in the public hearing. Anyone to speak for or against the sale of that parcel? All right. Seeing none, all those, we'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Now we are in the sale portion for 3rd and Main. Anyone that would like to make a bid, please come up, state your name and your bid.
Mark Sneckloff, representing Amundsen Farm Store in Cushing. I'd like to bid $380.
Mason,
What was that?
Burt Mason, I'd like to make a bid of 400 on it.
500,
6,
7,
8,
9,
1,000,
11,
12,
13,
You guys know each other?
no. 15,
16,
17,
18.
19.
You can have it.
So you're representing, who was that?
Amundsen Farm Store, Cushing?
Okay. And what was it? So that's who's purchasing it?
Yes. That's who I'm representing, yes.
what was the name, Farm Store? What?
ANFINSON.
Anfinson, okay.
Farm Store.
All right, so I'll move to sale to Anfinson Farm Store for $1,900.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, everybody.
Can I pay now? Or?
Heather is who you talked to right back there, so,
Thank you.
thank you. All right. Medical examiner, oh, sure. Okay, so now we'll move on to, we're gonna do 14A4. So we can have a discussion on the medical examiner if you want to come up.
Okay, we did have a discussion this morning with myself, Keith, and Doctor, and
Andrew?
Andrew. Okay, we came up with some cuts. There is some, little reservation here, but my thoughts are with these cuts here, even though we're cutting it back by 74,000, we're adding 4,000, they'll go through the cuts here, that the theory is we need to cut back somewhere. We come up where we took the year-to-date, divided by 7, took it times 12, we're up to 142,000. At 100, and we cut this back by 70,000, net 70,000, we'll still have 190, so that still leaves us plenty of room. If we have a catastrophe or some big upsurge, autopsy, whatever question was asked, then we always come back, they can come back to the board, and the board has reserves that could verify about it. Investigators and stuff, and they'll explain this, that we cut these costs down quite a bit. Still some little bit of reservation, but we always can come back during the year, next year, and add money if we have to. So I'll let them go ahead and go through the cuts here.
So, like Dennis said, our plan was to cut some things out, and we cut out 70,000, but then we added 4 back in for training, and that training line that we're going to be adding in is for our MEIs, or medical examiner investigators. And Keith and I talked this morning with Dennis, and we'll probably, if we could get the vehicle, we'd probably get that through ARPA funds, if that's available. And the plan is that we will cut out the ambulance assistance pretty much almost other than $5,000, right, Dennis?
Right, leave some in there in case we do need something other than that.
And so the plan is to have our medical examiner investigators going out on scene, assessing if the body needs to go to the morgue or not, communicating with the ME and her staff, and hopefully to cut down on some things, and also just make sure that things are going smoothly. If bodies need to be transported, if not transported, and we've also talked about that the MEI will transport the body to the morgue if that's the case. If not, if it's not an ME case, then the funeral home will come up and pick up the body to take the remains to where they need to go.
They did go down last Thursday to Potawatomi County and talk to their investigators, their whole medical examiner staff, and they came up with ideas here that they're going to follow through.
Yep, as long as we get the permission. So Paramedic Welty and I went down to Potawatomi County and met with their chief medical examiner, and she just walked us through their whole entire process of what they do for body remains and their step-by-step process that they do. And they do things just a little bit different because they don't have a hospital service that provides their pathology like we do here. So theirs is just a little bit different than ours, but for the most part, they're doing the things that we plan on doing. And they had the same price range when it came to spending the money for the MEI positions. They have a little more cost because they have all of their medical examiner investigators have phones and cameras and all those things. But the way that we were planning on doing it was on an on-call rotation, so we wouldn't have to have multiple cell phones, multiple vehicles, anything like that. It would just be one vehicle, a cell phone, a possible radio for the paging system, which can all come out of my office because we have spares there. But other than that, if y'all don't have any questions, that's what our plan is right now, and Dr. Brainer's here, and she can answer questions as well. I know we still have a couple meetings that we're gonna have to get with you all on when it comes to the medical examiner investigator portion itself, but it would be an on-call position, so it wouldn't be a full-time person, it'd just be whoever's on call would be the one that would go out per se with whatever the agency that's there, determine that the body has passed away, and then call the medical examiner's office, communicate with them, and say, yes, this body needs to come back and go to the morgue, or no, this body does not need to go to the morgue, it is a funeral home case. And I think that's about it, correct? Did I miss anything?
I'll just clarify that you said we were cutting 70 and adding 4. It was cutting 74 and adding 4, so a total reduction of 70. So, any other questions from anyone on the board on this?
So are we looking for a motion to receive this less the 70,000? Is that?
Yep.
Net 70, yes. There'll be add 4, take,
Yeah.
net 70, yep.
I'd move that.
I'll second it. And as further discussion, we did prorate out where we're at currently, and we still have 50,000 left to spare following that. So there is still a cushion if, this is going to be a work in progress. So we got to figure things out as we take this on and kind of change roles a little bit and how things are done. So any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for accommodating my schedule.
Yeah, not a problem.
Stuff, I appreciate it.
Yep. And apologies, back to item 12, secondary roads. Approval of right-of-way easement adjacent to Prairie Hills property.
Colin Ryan, secondary roads. Essentially, this is looking past the sale of the farm around County Home Road. Mark thought it would be prudent to extend our right-of-way easements to accommodate any future projects we might have in the area, especially with Old Highway 141 kind of being rather steep and a little short in the shoulder department. That could be a very foreseeable construction project in the future. So he asked that you review and approve these easements for along that area.
Okay.
So,
I will move it.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any other questions of him or any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0.
Good planning by our county engineer.
the auditor down here on the note.
All right. Moving on to item 13 from Board of Supervisors. A, approval to hire a farm management company to manage the sale of the county farm. Matthew or Jeremy?
So this item is to approve hiring a farm management company to manage the sale of the county farm. We agreed to, as a board, move forward with the sale, and we believe that Starcom Ag is a prominent local and efficient management firm that can best handle the sale of the county farm and help taxpayers realize maximum benefit from this prime piece of farmland the county acquired many decades ago. Starcom Ag did the appraisal for us. They have an impressive listing of acres that have been sold in this vicinity. As Dennis Raymond is here and is the past president of the National Farm Appraisers.
Managers and appraisers.
Thank you. And I think we think can handle the sale very well. Recently managed a sale gaining over $13,000 an acre near Danbury. And Supervisor Ung, do you have anything?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think they're well positioned in the space, and the fee structure is appropriate, and If there is a higher bid than we may anticipate, I think it would protect the county's interest as far as the cost to do so and realize the maximum benefit for the sale. So we've been contacted by a few different entities, but again, I think the fact they've done the appraisal, they're familiar, is a good start and way to move this forward. So I'd like to hear from Dennis, unless the board had any thoughts.
Was there any consideration to any Woodbury County selling agents?
I think we listened to the proposals from last week, but as I said, Dennis Raymond's a lifelong Woodbury County resident and sold, I think, more than I've seen listed from others. So. The financial impact also is $20,000.
So is that a yes or is that a no?
Yeah, there was consideration.
Okay.
Sure. Financial impact is $20,000 plus a 0.75% commission, which I think is very reasonable.
Our attorney did go through, Joshua went through this morning and came up with about six, seven suggestions. I went through it with him before the meeting. He's agreed to all these changes. One of the changes the board will have to discuss will be in their closed session, sell 1, 2, 3 parcels separately, also minimum price. Also, we brought up the issue of selling, say, 1 parcel, 2 don't sell. He'll prorate the 20,000 down by the number of acres. Joshua suggested this and he agreed to that. We'll have a price on each one. If they don't sell, we only pay them a prorated amount of the 20,000 plus the commission. We're anticipating selling them all. So I think there's a lot of demand out there. It'll probably go. And he'll come back with a contract too for next week to actually sign the contract. This is accept them today.
I think Dennis summarized it well. You know, all the suggestions are acceptable. We'll work on a prorated per parcel share on that $20,000 base, and then the commission on anything that's generated higher than that. So that's how we'll work that. Appreciate the opportunity to do it. We have sold a lot of farms in the close radius of Sioux City, especially in the last year. So I think we are well positioned with contacts in that. I am a Rock Township lifelong, actually my family goes back to 1891 in Rock Township, so I'm local.
Well, I'm not disputing that. I would just.
That's fine. So any questions? Otherwise, I'm good to go.
So one thing I'll add is the contract will have some language in there, and today's motion is subject to the public hearing that the board has to do for the sale of county property. And so we can't commit to sell until we've had that public hearing, but we anticipate that, you know, we haven't had public feedback to this point that's suggested that we don't sell. So we'll do that sometime before the auction. We'll have everything in place for auction day.
We've sold farms for other entities that have gone through that process, you know, and where you announce it that this is subject to, you know, in this case, board approval.
Right.
So.
Do we need to do anything in amending our motion, saying subject to approval at a public hearing, or?
I think it would be good to add that language, yeah, subject to the public hearing and finalization of the contract. It sounds like we have an agreement as far as the terms, and we'll have the actual.
And that's one of the suggestions Joshua had, is that as a standalone sentence at the end of the contract. So he's covered all the bases.
So I'd move to approve Starcom Ag Service Incorporated to manage the advertising, auctioneering, and sale of the Woodbury County Farm, subject to approval after a public hearing and finalization of the contract at a flat fee of $20,000 plus 0.75% of the sale price.
Second.
That was subject to our public hearing, correct?
Right.
All right, so we have
Will be
a
included in the contract.
motion by Taylor, second by Ung. Any other questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That passes 5-0.
Mr. Chair, for the second item, I'm deferring to you because we haven't discussed this. This item pertains to setting a closed session for next week for the Board of Supervisors to discuss best conditions, timing, and parameters for the sale. Is 3 p.m. something that would work for you? Would you prefer something different?
Well, we were starting at, when are we starting at 4 next week?
Yeah, because there's a whole lot on
So
the
we
budget
could,
side.
is 3:30
Kinda clean
good
up
enough?
and next week, we review whatever you want to review.
All right, so yeah, do you want to do a half hour or do you need the whole hour?
I don't think we need a whole hour.
Yeah.
No.
So Karen, if we could have a 3:30 closed session.
So I'd move to set a closed session for Tuesday, February 8th at 3:30 for the Board of Supervisors to discuss best conditions, timing, and other parameters for the sale with Starcom Ag Services.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Ung. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, moving on to 14A, Board of Supervisors, Comm Center is item 1.
I did hand out a revised budget I got yesterday. The good news is our allocation went down by $35,388. So we reduced the allocation we have by $35,388.
Glenn Sedeby, Communications Director. As Dennis handed out the sheet, our entire budget is $2,653,639. We bring in revenue from tower lease up at our North High Tower at $68,350, and we have some miscellaneous revenue of $30,330. Sergeant Bluff and North Sioux pay into our operating budget. Sergeant Bluff is $112,719, and North Sioux is $68,350. So the county's portion, which is 30.2% of our operating budget, is $624,249. It's the lower left portion of the sheet that's handed out.
Well, I'll move to receive it.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. Any further discussion on it?
With a reduction of $35,388.
Yeah, well, that's that.
Yep.
That's how it's presented here, I guess. I don't know.
$35,388. Yep.
Those numbers were given to me by finance yesterday, so.
All right. Any other discussion on it? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That passes 5-0. Moving on to Starcom, item 2.
Okay, the Starcom operating budget, we have a total of expenditures of $521,889.36. We bring in $124,962 in tower rent and fiber optics leases. The county is responsible for 23% of the operating budget, which is $91,293.29. This budget was approved at the last Starcom board meeting, so it's being presented to this board tonight for approval. $91,293.29.
We don't get in the pennies.
$91,293.29.
What are the differences between pages 38, 39? 23%? One of them says 101, one of them says 75. One says with a radio technician.
I don't have those sheets with me.
Okay.
What was changed in this year's budget is they took half the salaries of Wendy's position and is being paid by Starcom, because in the past I've taken care of all the Starcom sites.
Okay.
And I'm retiring this fall. So In the past, South Sioux and Dakota County and Union County have never paid in towards my wage. So they wanted to spread that, part of that wage out to those communities that have never paid for me maintaining the Starcom infrastructure. So, and then they also removed the truck that I use every day out of my department, along with its expenses, and they moved it into Starcom, so Dakota and South Sioux and Union are helping pay for that fee also.
So these were probably put in here prior to your Starcom meeting, is that?
Yes,
And
they
now,
had
okay.
2 or 3 different budgets without, and they
Got it.
finally ended up at the 91. What this does, it cuts what we have in the budget from 101 down to 91, which is $10,053 reduction.
I'll move that to receive that.
Second.
10,000, what was it again there, Jen?
053.
10,053. Any other discussion on this item? So what are you going to do with retirement?
And enjoy it, hopefully. September 30th.
Okay.
I've retired, so it's time for me to hand the reins off to somebody else. It'll be 27 years, so.
Well, thank you for doing it. I
Appreciate all the support this board has given me over the years, and it's been a good run.
It's been fun to work with you over the last more than a decade, and, you know, we always give you a hard time for being so excited when you come up, but.
Oh, yeah. All right, well, thank you.
You bet, thank you. All right. Well, seeing no other discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to A3, Youth Guidance Services.
On this one here, this is our child placement by court, and it was 175. I reduced it by 55,000 based on what was spent. I think we can still take another 20,000 off, down to 100,000. These are hard to predict, but we can, you know, maybe adjust it next year to next year's budget, but that'd be knocking off 75,000 this year. We've reduced it the previous year. We've reduced it the last few years, and we just keep going down, but I don't want to take it down too far in case the courts do order some placements of children. So this would knock it down 20,000 more to 100,000.
So that's an additional cut from where it was presented, or? Okay.
This is the first time it's been presented. I actually cut it from.
Well, for the book.
On page 42 under the supervisors.
Yeah.
So this would actually be cutting it 20,000 more than what I had already cut it previous to what you had, is to bring it to you guys. So suggested cut it down 20 to 100,000.
I'll move to receive it down at 100,000.
Second.
Motion by Radig, second by Taylor. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to 14B, the 2023 CIP program.
On this one here, I'll pass these out. These are only what people requested for next year. Like I said, last year and this year, this is a moving target. In this case here, I'm showing you what has been asked for. Now, there may be some of these that may be pressing needs to go ahead and do, but right now, this is what it stands at.
Dennis, how much of this is in the budget right now?
None of these.
None of these.
None of these are in there.
So everything that we add in,
Changes debt service.
It'll change debt service for next year in May when we borrow next year. And I have to come back with a 22 CIPs soon because we need to determine which ones possibly could be covered by ARPA, which ones aren't, because if they can be covered, then I reduce our debt obligation starts next year for our CIP this year. We always spend up to and try to get this as close as we can, and then from there, we just, move on. And there's no more CIPs this year, they have to wait till July 1st. The one thing that might be pressing that may need prior approval, and the sheriff could answer this, you'll see there's body-worn cameras and tasers. We know how important these are on any kind of thing that deputies require, and I don't know how soon they would like these to be purchased. If they can wait till July 1st, that's fine, but if they can't, they probably won't receive the product till after the 1st. They can go ahead and get them, because if you approve them, this is the only one I'd suggest, think about a little bit approving, so they can go ahead and get them ordered. I don't know how long it takes.
Well, if you guys, either you guys want to come speak to that.
Anyway, you want to help address this a little bit? Okay, if there's really a need and they're out of warranty, they need these body cameras, because they're very important.
I honestly can't say that, like the car ones, that company was no longer making that camera, so we were trouble. These, we have the cameras. Now, he's absolutely right. One breaks, we have to purchase another one because it's out of warranty. But part of this ask is also for tasers. Right now, we're buying them willy-nilly. One goes down, one breaks, it's out of warranty, we buy it. This is just making the plan come all together so we can budget for it. You asked about, is it changing our budget? Our budget's going to change because we're spending money on this stuff right now, but we're spending it in chunks here, here, and here instead of getting everything and then getting on a 5-year plan. Long story short, I think we can wait till July 1 before we have to worry about getting these, if that helps.
Well, to me, this seems like something that would be an ARPA-related fund, you know, to reduce gun violence and the language and the, I don't know.
And that we can check out too. You know, if you can wait till after July 1st, we can check it out whenever they're ready to buy. Are they out of warranty now too?
Yes.
They're all out of warranty, so we wait till after July 1st and just replace them all. And if ARPA covers, that's even better.
We lost the chance for a little bit cheaper price because we couldn't get it done before January 1st. I mean, there was just no way. But
Everything's going through inflation right now, and it's
Right.
killing everything.
Right.
How many cameras and tasers was that purchase?
77 tasers, roughly 110 body-worn cameras.
And that would set y'all up long-term?
That would get patrol in the jail side of the house taken care of. And what this plan is it's 5 years with an upgrade in the middle, so we get new product to be upgraded, and then a bunch of training. I can explain it. I don't have my paperwork here today, but yes, this gets us exactly where we need to be for capturing this technology of what we just had in Sergeant Bluff a few weeks ago. I mean, this technology is, we have to have it for the courts, and this is what we need to use.
Correct, and maybe you have a question that'll cover this, but this puts us on a service plan type of system.
Yep.
So that if there's issues with the cameras, they're just sent back in and fixed, or we get a brand new one. So it's a much different plan than what we're currently on. And then we also automatically get the next upgrade at the end of, when we go to the next time that we're gonna re-up, is it a 4 or 5 year?
5 years.
Then before the end of the 5 year, we get the newest, latest version of whatever it is.
We're wearing body-worn 2s now. Body-worn 3s is what this version is, and we would go to body-worn 4s at the end of this program. So it'd be built into this.
And the only other thing I would say, and the chief hit on it briefly, was when, and we could, Dennis might be able to tell you the history going back, maybe you all would know, but when Sheriff Drew and the Sheriff's Office implemented the body-worn cameras, the number of lawsuits dropped. They exponentially dropped because now the story tells itself. And, when the findings come out finally in the next week or two from the incident from a couple weeks ago, everybody will be thankful that there was a body-worn camera, because there's no ambiguity. It is what it is. The story tells itself because of the videos and just the value of having that is huge for the county, to be able to not have to rely on anybody else's word. There it is. It tells the story. And it doesn't tell 100% of the story, but it certainly makes it much more transparent for the public. So, go ahead.
Is there somewhere within your operating budget where, even if it was $50,000 a year, or, we're making these purchases kind of piecemeal, and now we're taking care of it for the next 5 that we can look at. Does that make sense?
Yes, Chairman, there is, what I can't tell you what it is right now.
Yeah, and that's fine. I
have some numbers that what we've been paying on average year for these, where we're taking them out of. I'll have to go look, but we are spending money on this stuff right now. And yes, to buy this, it would be only right to say, okay, we'll take this money to help assist with it. Where it's at, I'll have to do some digging.
And we can certainly sit down with Dennis and Jennifer over the next week or whatever, the next several days, and figure out where those savings might be and what in real dollars those add to.
Okay.
Because we will be saving money by having this new service plan agreement or whatever.
That'd be appreciated, so, thank you.
On the liability side, does that go to like PJs or is that through HR?
Say that again, what do you mean?
Well, on the liability, is it just, we probably pay a standard amount for liability insurance and then,
Well, I think a lot of what happened, what I've been told by Doug Phillips, who represents us oftentimes, what he kind of brought me up to speed on when I was finally sworn in was that what happened was, before it was always the inmate's word versus a correctional officer's word. So attorneys would roll the dice and hope that maybe you all would settle a claim or, you know, or take it to trial and hope they get a good jury seated that will rule in their favor. Once the body-worn cameras were implemented, what happened was those cases, they went away because there was no inmate's word versus the CO's word. It was, here's what the inmate says, here's what the CO says, and what the CO says is backed up by the video evidence. And most of those cases just stopped. Those lawsuits were no longer filed. They weren't even having to answer. Josh, you've been around long enough. Is that accurate description of how it kind of progressed?
We've gotten fewer lawsuits from the jail, for sure.
so is that directly into PJ's budget or is that, I mean, on the liability side?
That'd be off our liability fund.
I'm not saying we're gonna cut somewhere, I'm just asking where we made that savings.
Tax liability fund, where we actually generate money out of the general sub to transfer over to the liability fund, which covers person comp, liability lawsuits, things like that.
So we're self-insured up to 300,000, right?
300.
I'd like to see on all of these, and as part of a broader discussion, but what can we use ARPA funding for? I mean, it seems like we're remiss if we don't at least look at it. I'm not saying that's, neither here nor there as far as the specific request, but I think it certainly gives us more impetus, because right now, we're still at almost a $1.8 million gap, even after all today's cuts, if we want to keep taxes flat. And this, what does this do annually to, like FY '23, is this about $530,000? We pay this over a 5-year,
We paid over a 5-year plan. Yep.
so about $530,000 if we approved everything on here?
Yeah, what was our total here?
$2,600,000.
Yeah, about 5 plus interest.
So that, I mean, now we're back up to 2.3 million that we've got to,
And that's why we got, probably the next couple of weeks or by 1st of March, look at our current 22. Is there things we can fund out of our current 22? Because I estimate we borrow all the money for the 22 projects, but some of those could be used hopefully from ARPA. And then we can reduce our tax levy for debt service there also. One example is $1 million for the care facility. Estimate, we have no idea what it's going to cost, but Keith thought it might be covered by ARPA. We'll have to look into that. But those are things we need to decide on the 22, probably within the next 3 or 4 weeks. What can be used with ARPA funds?
I think broadly, we're on safer footing using it for the '23 budget year, just generally, since it is a new, you could make a better argument that it's a new expense.
these with WCICC, these are portions of what it would cost?
Yes. And it's high next year because moving out to the new facility, we have to, the big item is the new generator. Kenny's estimated $450,000 for that. That's just an estimate, but that's a generator to back up all the computer systems out there. Now, we have one sitting over here. I don't know if we can sell it or what we can do. Kenny'd have to answer that possibly. But there's that possibility there to generate some revenue back.
That's not big enough?
No,
Okay.
at least according to John, I believe. We could ask him.
Well, some of that WCICC you'd think would fall under communications and,
Well, the 170 is our share that we budget every year, 125, 150, 170. They budget 170, we budget 170. Then some of this other stuff there, possibly.
go ahead, Dan.
Dan Heisel, Conservation Director. Sheriff Sheen and I were back there talking. Our department has also been looking at tasers, and that's that next level that you can use before deadly force. And we have body cameras, so we were talking that if he's going to order 77, we'd like to order 85. Order the 8 for our department, and it comes out to about, if ARPA funds are possibly to pay for them, that officer safety, I mean, that's huge for us too, so that's.
They're about 1,200 apiece, so you'd be talking less than 10, $9,600 to outfit everybody that you would need, so.
When we have 8 officers, and then it would be on the level he's got, so if we've got equipment problems or need to trade batteries or ordering batteries, we could do bulk ordering, stuff like that, so. I just we thought we'd better throw that in there.
And you currently don't have tasers,
We
correct?
do not have them.
And neither does the sheriff's department?
No, we do.
Okay, you do, they're just,
They're old and breaking down often.
okay.
Like I say,
This package comes with training supplies.
Well, just come on up here and say, I'm sorry to make you do it, but.
He's half crippled right now, so.
This package comes with the training and the training supplies and to take away the liability with all that stuff. If we could, I can't overemphasize to you guys just the liability issues. If they're doing law enforcement work without some kind of secondary weapon instead of, a step before deadly force, that's not such a good thing. But if our package would just, we would be the owners and we would issue them to the county conservation guys. I mean, it would just die right into that package. So he mentioned it. I'm like, well, if we're going to do it, let's do it right and add those right there. So that's all.
And your guys are law enforcement officers out there.
They're all certified through Iowa Law Enforcement Academy, just like the deputies.
Then I don't see any,
Training.
I don't see any difference why they shouldn't.
So, thank you.
and this just gives you a general idea. We can vary that first thing we want because we don't borrow the money until May. So it's kind of a moving target out there because there may be other CIPs that might pop up during the year. So we just kind of add and subtract and come up with a number by April to borrow for May.
You have a question?
All you're doing is receiving today with them to come back following July 1st for each case.
Well, does this 841, 130, Chief?
Probably.
Does this and Dan, does this 841, 130, or 430 include the 8 extra tasers for his budget?
No, we just talked about this 2 minutes ago. I mean, that's.
So we'd need to add $9,600 to this? Okay.
But you're just receiving this anyway. You aren't committing to any of these until after July 1st. But it doesn't affect our budgets.
Mr. Chair, I think it's a little bit of a gray area and something we need to be clear about in communications because I feel like sometimes our department heads say, well, you approved this back then, and now they're getting ready to do something, and we say, well, it's not really approved, we just approved it kind of. So
We did tell them that up front last year. These are received, proposals, they have to come back after July 1st, just like we're saying today. These aren't officially approved to go ahead and do them. They still have to come back to the board because they may change in numbers, and there could be various changes here. That's why this just gives you a snapshot of what they would like to have, but to actually get it approved, definitely, you can do that after July 1st.
So what's the process that's communicated to our department heads? So for example, the tuck pointing, we haven't talked about climbing hill. That I know of, we haven't talked about it. It's a pretty big expense. We're receiving it, and if they actually want to do it, they need to come and talk about the proposal, the needs, et cetera. Is that what we're saying?
Confer to the department heads, yes.
So the perfect example of this would district health windows that we approved a couple weeks ago. Okay, we had them in our CAP, we had them at a certain dollar amount. He got the bids, he brought them in, and they were a little steep. So, we still approved it, but,
And he stated his dollar amount, he's gonna make it up somewhere with a grant or funds within
Yeah.
his funds.
so if tuck pointing came in and it was $200,000, I mean, honestly, I don't know that, I mean, I'd vote against it, but
So these are possible potentials, but not really a
These numbers could
placeholder.
increase or decrease, but they need to come back, and that's the message we need to send. The department heads to come back after July 1st with proposals that are finite numbers.
Pat, did you have something? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, just saying that's always been clear.
Okay.
I know that's always been clear at this meeting or when we're talking about it here, but I share the concern about how well it's being communicated to the department heads because I'm trying to think of the specific projects offhand, but we've had a couple of instances where they've gone ahead and committed to the project with the contractor or supplier, and we find out after the fact. So we need to make sure that if tonight is kind of a conditional approval or it's a placeholder for these dollars, but you got to come back. Like I said, there's been a couple situations I've been a part of where we're figuring out after the fact that, okay, we've got to honor what the department head has done, but there should be the prior approval at the time that it's being done.
Maybe something, Mr. Chair and Dennis, you could send out to everyone, just kind of reiterate that?
Let them know, because I think one of the problems came up, I think with district health with the windows. They went ahead and did it. They felt they had the money committed. They really hadn't come back to the board and say, yeah, let's go ahead and put windows in our building. They went kind of ahead and got the plans and everything, came back, and we were kind of stuck with it. We need to send a message that's either here, after July 1st, you need to come back to the board with finite numbers, so you know what you are approving. Because like Keith said, tuck pointing, you budget 120, well, we need to wait till after July 1st. If you go with that plan, you need to know what the exact number is, in case it's 200,000.
I'm still curious how you spend $15,000 in caulking, but
It's a lot of caulk.
yeah, I think so.
Well, if that's the case, then I'd move to receive this as a potential placeholder.
Second it. Motion by Taylor, second by Ratty. Any discussion beyond the discussion? No? Did you have something? Okay. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, and next we got 14C. I have been requested a restroom break, so I think we'll take 6 minutes for that. So, well, we'll just meet back at 4:30.
I don't know.
Kind of noisy, aren't you?
What's that?
I said, I'm hungry too, I need
Some
some.
Doritos.
Don't tell her where you got them.
We talked about ordering some pieces last
I
week.
think.
Some language.
You guys ought to be shooting your guns, you know. You gotta wear that ear protection.
Loud rock and roll music and add some hearing aids to those body cameras.
That's right.
It's the echo. Just can't hear it.
All right, we got 4:30. We're back in session here. Moving on to wage plan employees, 14C. Dennis, what do you got for us here? Give us
This was a sheet prepared on request and we're distributing to show you what the differences are. We have 2.75% allocated in all the budgets for wage plan employees. With what Social Security got and what inflation has gone up and it's going to continue to go up even higher. We did a breakdown of where you got the 2.75 for your wage plan. And down below is another issue, but for the wage plan, you can see 275 is 0 increase. You go to 4.5, it's 73,000 additional. Fund 7% is 177,000 additional. 9% is 260 additional, and 11% is 343,000 additional. That covers all your wage plan. So from that, it's now really a discussion of where do you want to go?
Just so I'm clear on where the starting conversation is, who exactly requested these particular numbers to be shown?
Jeremy.
Okay.
Personally, I kind of like to keep it where we budget it, but everyone else has their opinion, so let's see if we can meet up somewhere.
Mr. Chair, I had the Rolling Hills meeting, and we set wages at 4%. So that will cover our 4 employees, and then kind of pulled the other counties. I think to a county it was either 4, 4 1/4, 4 1/2, and I think the highest one was 5. So
Why are we even discussing anything that doesn't at least meet inflation? We have to, at some point, take care of our employees. And at 4.5%, that does nothing but say, we're going to hand you a loss for working here. Mr. Taylor's numbers here a couple of weeks ago showed, I forget, 6.8, 7 point something inflation index. But I'm listening to economists tell us that it's a lot closer to 20 when food and fuel is factored back in. And I think anything less than actual inflation rate is an insult. We have got to take care of the employee. How are we going to attract employees in the future if we can't keep up with inflation? Not only that, our employees have been suffering inflation since the first of this year. We'll have to continue it until July 1st to even get a modicum raise of the chairman's idea of 2.75. That's insulting. And to give them, that's not even considered a raise. That's cost of living at best. So how can we sit here and pretend like 2.75 or even 4.5 is reasonable and fair to employ? You know, we sit here, there's 5 of us sit here, we're all elected. But who runs this county? It's not us. We've got, what, 400 employees that come to work every day, and they make us look good. And I'm not just talking about the directors. We've got employees that matter. And 2 3/4 or 4.5 does not show me that they matter. It just makes no sense. Why would we even discuss anything less than today's inflation rate? And 4.5 is not the inflation rate, and nobody has given us a time on a local or national level that this is going to slow down going forward for the next year. I don't see the point of even discussing anything less than actual increase, which would only bring our employees back up to where they started January of last year. We have got to take care of our employees. If we don't, they'll find somebody else, and we all know what it's like finding help in the private and public sector. There's no 2 ways around it. Inflation hits everybody. Mr. Radig, you said a few minutes ago, everything's going up through inflation. Everything and for everyone. Go ahead.
Sure. So I'm in a supervisory position in a couple other, for several healthcare clinics, and I can tell you the labor shortage is being felt in the private sector as well. Everywhere we go, there's help needed. Things are slowing down. we could debate about why that is, but at the heart of this question, I think, is whether or not this inflation we're talking about is so-called transitory. And I don't think it is. I think it's been pitched to us that it is, and you know, just like we have a bunch of Nostradamuses telling us the prices are going to go down on the jail cells and things like that, time passes and they go up. I mean, since the first time we were told it was transitory, year over year, monthly inflation has gone up. We're at 7% now. As we talked about, that's the base government-approved number that's lower than anything that is being felt by people living in the real world. The difference, you know, there are differences we have to consider with public and private. The county does have, of course, stellar benefits. Everyone knows that. But by the same token, we've kind of appealed to that year over year. There's not the same flexibility that the public sector has when you compare it to the private sector. I've been involved in hiring employment positions and seeing, you know, the need to increase certainly beyond the lower numbers that are on this sheet, and that's been easily done. You talk to the bosses, you figure out what works, and you implement it, you know, by next week. In county government, whatever we approve today, we can't just think that it's gonna, you know, we're gonna have this same flexibility and call another board meeting and do this or that to the wage plan employees, because that's a big deal. The board has made adjustments to salaries a couple times in the past, and it's always been a big ordeal. It's not something you just snap your fingers and implement the change that you think is needed. So I think if there was ever a year to appeal to the actual inflation number, this would be it. We do have a bridge we can use in the use of ARPA funds. And I say it's a bridge because we are having increasing revenues from CF Industries come on. They're coming on in steps, but we have lights at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. And you know, again, I just think that there's the inflexibility in government once you set something, and I can't tell anyone that inflation is going to go down from here or get better when everything points to the contrary. And so my vote will be for 7%, and I see that as a keeping up with inflation number rather than any sort of a over and above raise.
Go ahead.
I appreciate Supervisor Young's comments and Supervisor DeWitt's. One thing that I wanted to ask Dennis to put together just informationally is most of our union contracts are at about 2.75, roughly. 2.5. And we're talking about wage plan employees at 7 and maybe 9 or 11. Whatever we do today is absolutely going to have second and third order effects. And so for the taxpayer, I want to look at the bottom line. For example, if you say 9%, that's $260,000 when we haven't gotten to, we didn't get down to 1.8 million. And that's the largest tax increase, I think, in a couple of decades. And looking at 260,000, but then if you go down and say, okay, 9%, every union is going to use that. Whatever you do today is going to say, well, what did you do for your wage plan employees? That's 854,000. Those numbers never go down. Not to mention we have to make sure that we have enough federal prisoners to take the 1.3 million and make sure that that's covered. That's my concern. When we look at the counties around us at 4 and 5%, and that's my biggest concern is I do not want to raise taxes, and we haven't met the gap to be able to hold the line. So, That's why I'm at 4.5.
Can we speak?
Not quite yet. We got a board consider. Personally, I'd like to see us where we were budgeted. I could see going up to 4.5 as a compromise on my vote. I wouldn't go above that. Do you have anything to add there, Justin, too?
I've been thinking about a couple things. You look at what teachers have been paid for the last 10, 15 years. If we're getting a 3% raise, we're having drinks. Because 3%, that's a huge raise for teachers around here. And, but people still choose to teach because sometimes at the end of the day, you do what you do because you love what you do, not because of what you're going to get paid at the end of the day. And I understand that that's a factor that we have to consider. In what's happening right now, what's happened over the last 18 to 24 months has made it really, really difficult. When I go to the grocery store, but if we support an increase like 7% or higher, we have to pay for that somehow. And as Mr. Taylor just pointed out, we're already looking at trying to make up 1.9 million. And 11% increasing, the budget by 343,000, or at 9%, $260,000. That's not where the real concern lies. And I think everybody sitting in this room understands that what we do with that number is going to set the tone for the negotiations for the union employees. We're not talking about $350,000 with an 11% raise then. We're talking about millions and millions of dollars that we'd have to come up with to pay the union contracts at that point. And it's not about me, but I made a commitment to try to keep taxes low when I ran. I'm not running again, so at this point, I'm not making a decision on the basis of what's going to be popular. So I'm going to try to open up my thinking a little bit and not think doesn't have to be completely about looking good for people, but it still needs to be about keeping your word a little bit. And so I want to continue to keep taxes low during the last year that I'm sitting up here. And the other thing I was thinking about recently is I've sat in some meetings here recently looking at it's a fairly rosy picture financially looking ahead 20 years for Woodbury County. If Sheriff Sheehan is able to manage the Sheriff's Department in a way that those federal contracts come in and those are generating $3, $4, $5 million a year, that will lead to some savings for taxpayers. Or you look at the CIP revenues that continue to come in, and that's a bigger slice that's coming into the county. But I really think during this really tumultuous time right now, we need to be smart and we need to be cautious because we don't want to. We are really set up very, very well for a board 15 years from now to make some of these decisions. But if we get really, really, really reckless right now because the picture does look so bright, in 15 years, instead of looking at those opportunities, because your position is so well financially, we can eat those things up right now if we're not careful. And so I'm not going to support anything 7 or higher. I got to be under 7. And the number that I had in mind is 4%. It does.
Are you open up the outside yet?
We don't have a motion yet on, if you're looking at that, I'll move 4%. You want a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Raddick, second by Wright. Now we'll have discussion. Go ahead.
Okay. My opinion is, so Social Security got 5.9 effective January 1st. They're already behind. Inflation's 7 to 10%, it's gonna keep going up. They're already behind. I would think the county employees would at least deserve the 5.9. That's in between your 7 and your 4.5, but they at least deserve that. I got my APS bill last week, 100% higher for the gas. Gas has gone up tremendously. How are we supposed to pay that and still stay status quo, not at least get the cost of living? Now, cost of living is 7%, yeah. And I think it's even higher than that now, but at least go with what Social Security got. That's 5.9, round it off to 6. And that reduces, that's in between your 4.5 and 7, so then you're probably only talking the difference of probably 100,000 to 110,000. But at least consider what the Social Security people have, and they aren't even gonna be able to make it. They should have raised that twice that for them, because they've always fallen behind, but I think we should at least keep up close to inflation. That 6% isn't even close. But at least they should at least get that, your employees. Remember, these are your directors, the people, the managed people that make this county government go under your direction. I think they deserve it.
I understand that, but at the same time, I've never had a job that had a guaranteed wage increase until being in a government position. I managed McDonald's, I managed Burger King's, I've managed other things, I've painted, I've done construction. In my current position, all I've ever gotten is percentage decreases in my wage. So it's not like everybody in the private sector gets the same deal of an annual wage increase. And when you do get an annual wage increase, then when there is inflation, you're not going to get the same increase as somebody in the private sector might. Because when I left, I'll bring up, say, like McDonald's. You know, as a manager, I made $24,000 a year managing a restaurant. That same job, maybe now today, starting is probably around $32,000. It's not grown at that same percentage after 20 years. It stayed at that same dollar amount for almost 5 years and then jumped up a lot in 1 year or 2 years when there's inflation. And it's the same thing for a lot of the private sector positions out there that, yeah, you're seeing a lot of increases in the private sector right now, but that's because they are competing for what available labor there is. So it's not a comparison.
I think we're competing also. If somebody quits,
Sure.
you used to have 20 people apply, now you're lucky if you got 5.
Right, well, that's
4 weren't even qualified.
the same everywhere you go in every
You can see
position.
what John Deere did down there. They had tremendous increases over 2-3 years. I think the school system, I think I just saw in the paper, they're getting $4,000 to $4,400 average increases. That's more than 4%. That was right in the newspaper. I can pull the article up too if I have to, I can show you.
Right,
They
but
said they're averaging $4,000.
we're also in a different position, and it's FDR, I believe, that said, you know, when you have a government position, it's bargaining against the taxpayer, which, you know, in my position, I feel I'm elected to represent the taxpayer, you know, and I understand, you know, where, you know, your position as an employee is, and I don't feel like 4% is abuse by any means, so I'm sorry for feeling that way, but, you know, that's the way I feel.
Also, Keith, maybe we ought to do comparables. My position pays a lot more through other positions that government tax supported. How do we ever catch up? And I'm not unhappy by any means. I love what I do.
Right.
But I think it's got to be fair to not just me, but all people. And maybe the contracts, you know, maybe they should have to be over. I don't know.
Mr. Chair?
Go
ahead.
I'm going to let you talk about that one, but go ahead.
I'm done.
I think that comparing McDonald's and our workforce I think it's more important to get someone's title work done or their birth certificate right than it is to get their burger right. I don't care what fast food that's retail, that is what it is. We are not in retail. But we still have 400 employees that deserve some modicum of, I don't know. I know, how many employees do you know? I mean, besides the directors and so forth. I work in this building, I know a lot of them, I know most of them from secondary roads, I know a lot of them from the sheriff's office. I don't know any of them that are sending their kids to Princeton. It's not like we're dealing with, it's not like we're trying to get them into the six figures here. I'm just trying to keep them up with inflation. And I'm not gonna support anything less than 7.
You mentioned on a hammer on what McDonald's, Keith. I know you guys are up against a hard spot, but that is just the biggest slap in the face. McDonald's isn't mandated to make a hamburger. We're mandated to have a facility to keep the public safe. McDonald's, you make a hamburger, you're gonna go home that night. Every time our people go to work, you don't know if they're going home. You said that not everybody deserves a raise. I would agree with you if we were #1 in our comparison groups. We're not even halfway. Hell, our jail administrators are in 20th place. So you give them less of a raise than inflation, they're just going backwards. And you say you do it for the love of the job. Well, back in those, my wife's a teacher. You could still raise a family. It's getting harder and harder and harder to make that paycheck meet what you need. I understand, I don't want my taxes going up, but you have to prioritize what is important to the citizens of Woodbury County. I'm only speaking for the sheriff's office. I'm not speaking for all the other wage plan employees. But for the wage plan employees that we have, they bust their ass. They keep you guys out of so many damn lawsuits. They work their butts off. And to sit here and listen to this, it just pisses me off. It's a slap in the face, whether you mean it or not, but it's not right. It isn't what it needs to be. Sheriff's got numbers, what he wants to talk about, I'll let him do that.
Dan Heisel, Conservation. I just want to put one other thing out there. A lot of us out here in the workforce have to have an education to get this job. We have to be law enforcement certified to get the job. Other than having a 4-year degree, you have to be law enforcement certified to do a sheriff conservation. Medical, all the training they have to do, all the CEUs they have to do. There's a lot of people out on the street, they don't need that. They can go work, McDonald's, Tony, sorry, they can go to McDonald's and work. They don't need that degree. Professionalism, what Rocky talks about, what makes this county run is your people. And if you got good ones, they need to be treated well. Dennis, I came here from Clay County to not have a budget director. That's the best position I'd lobby for right there, because he does a lot of the work for the department heads. He does a lot of work for you, and you wouldn't believe. I support him too. So it's just, a lot of us need educations, from pesticide certifications to be out in the parks to everything we do. We have to be certified. So we keep that professionalism up. And so just.
They don't want me to talk.
I understand.
You just get, it's like in pickleball, you gotta get your paddle in the queue.
I understand I'm the newest director probably that the county has, and I just really want to touch on, yesterday, for example, for my employees, we had 3 calls stacked, and they were all ALS calls, and that was really hard for us to juggle all those calls, and fortunately enough, we did have coverage for those calls, but I've had my employees tell me that it's hard for them to continue to work here at the pay that they've been making, just because they can't feed their families, and they're having multiple 2 or 3 jobs. I know Welty, for a long time when he worked here full-time, had 3 other full-time jobs with it. So I just want y'all to take that into consideration, that, like they said, our positions are qualified positions. You have to have the credentials to do certain parts of our jobs, and that's, I think, the most important part that you have to realize. And I'm not saying any other department's not any less, but we are in the life-saving business on my side of the house and their side of the house, and making sure our people are safe. So just a thought for y'all. Thank you.
I don't really want to even talk about the inflation because that's political and it's who knows what, but I've just felt over the last 2 years that we kind of got the short shaft just from the whole COVID thing. It's not These are all 24/7 people here, just like myself, and we really never even got a thank you for keeping this place afloat the last 2 years. We went to work every single day. We weren't able to shut down. We didn't get to stay home and collect a check. I've never even had a COVID test because I was worried about the precedent it would set for my staff to just everybody be going to getting tests for every little illness. We didn't have a choice. We had to stay open. We had to come to work. I worked the floor. I worked shifts. I worked overnights. I worked weekends. I got called 24 hours a day. I had to keep kids in their room because I had 1 or 2 staff. I mean, it was terrible. It was seriously terrible staffing the last 2 years. I used to get 60, 70 applications. I might get 2, might get 1, and they might not even be high school graduates. It's that bad. I started here 15 years ago, and it was 4.5% every year. Then I think I went 3 or 5 years with 0%, no raises at all. Then all of a sudden it came back as 2% again. I mean, it never was what it was before. But I just know for myself personally, the last 2 years have been stressful as hell. We've been through a lot, and I kind of just want, a little bit of recognition for the last 2 years more than anything.
Go ahead, please. Sure. Were you going to go up or no? I thought you were getting up to speak.
No, no. I guess my only comment is, understandably, Jeremy's called the other counties and seen where their raises are, but you have to kind of take into account where they start. Are they starting at $10,000 higher as a department head, then they get the 3%. So I think that makes a big difference, not only to look at what they're getting across the state for raises, but also the comparable. And their job description too makes a big difference in what they're responsible for. Thank you.
May I ask a quick question of Melissa?
Go ahead.
In regards to the vacancy issue, public versus private, how has your experience been recently with overseeing the hiring vacancies and how long positions are open in different departments in the county?
Well, we have gotten less applications. How long the vacancies are open, there's a couple reasons for that. Sometimes, the departments are just so busy, they don't have time to hire somebody. They don't have time to interview. Everything is just go, go, go for that department. So there are those circumstances. And there's other circumstances that they can't find anybody that's qualified. But we do get the applications in, and we're reaching out farther and more websites and just doing the best we can. So.
Just if I could clarify, it was a Rolling Hills meeting where everybody was sharing what their counties were giving, and nobody was above 5%. So just to clarify that.
If I may give you a little spreadsheet. This is, before I get into looking at the spreadsheet and talking about the wage plan employees that I have up in the jail, I always try to put myself in another person's shoes. So if I'm sitting where you all are, I understand the dilemma and the struggle that you have being a good steward of the taxpayers' dollars. And understanding that you, Keith, I think I wrote it down, that as an elected supervisor, you represent the taxpayers. And I agree. But I will just tell you that the day that you make it so that the employees aren't here anymore and the taxpayers don't get the services that they expect with the taxes they pay, you will pay for that, right? So yes, I totally agree with you that you represent the taxpayer, and I understand that it's a difficult situation to be in. But the taxes that they're paying, they are expecting a certain level of service. And I think for the county that we have, the level of service that they get across the board is top-notch. Rocky said it, the 400 employees that work here, they're some of the greatest people in Woodbury County, and they don't work here for the money. Let's face it, they don't. There's probably private sector jobs that they could go get that they would make more money. Yes, the benefits are great, but they like the working with everybody. They like the people that come and work in a government agency. But I know from listening to people, we've lost people to other places. They go into the private sector because it's getting tougher. And when the private sector is giving 7, 8, 9, 10% raises to keep up with the inflation and other things, it does make it harder. So when you try to toe the line so hard on the dollars, and you lose track of the fact that people are gonna leave because of it, when the taxpayer realizes, you know, damn, I would have rather spent an extra $100 that year and made sure that when my husband has a heart attack, a certified paramedic's gonna be able to show up and do things for them, because that's the level of service we expect living in Woodbury County. So I would just ask you to keep that in mind, to make sure that being a good steward of the taxpayers' dollars is also guaranteeing them the service that they expect for the dollars they're spending. So I just, again, I totally understand you guys are in a difficult situation. As you're looking at this spreadsheet, it was, Dennis was in my office, I think a week or two ago. It was 2 weeks ago, I think, is that right? And I knew that the wage plan was gonna be coming up. I started looking at Captain Harlow, who's sitting over along the bench there. He's our jail administrator. He basically runs the jail in the day-to-day operations. He has about 65 employees under him, and he has about 230, 240 not so happy
Guests?
guests, yes, guests, tenants, people staying with us on a nightly basis. And while he doesn't provide a mint on their pillow, he does provide a safe place for them to do the time that the courts have required them to do. And he does an outstanding job. And I will tell you that I'm embarrassed that it took me a year to realize that he is about $20,000 lower paid than the next. I only looked at the top 10 counties. He's 10th at $84,000. The 9th highest paid jail administrator in Dubuque County is at $101,000. I told Dennis, and we called Melissa, I said, I'm embarrassed. I mean, I apologized to him. I said, man, I'm embarrassed. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that there was that much disparity between you and my guess is if we went to the top 20, he's probably 20th at $84,000. So whatever you're gonna do, if it is that 4.5% or whatever, I didn't hear I just did the math, 4.5% on what he's making now would take him up to 88,000. What I would ask for the jail captain, for our wage plan employees, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. For our wage plan employees, if you're gonna do whatever percentage you do, I would ask that for them, you give them a cash bump on top of that to get them where they really should be. Because you've got 35 years experience, 35 years experience with Lieutenant Ewell, and 37 years experience with Mary Filer. I'll be honest, if I'm in their shoes, I'm retiring. They can all draw IPers, and we're gonna lose over 100 years of experience, if that happens. And I don't wanna see that happen. I know they still love what they do, but if you can go draw IPers and then go work part-time at Shields or somewhere else and make more money than coming to work in that difficult job that they do, why wouldn't you? And I don't wanna see that. So I would just ask you to consider, at least, again, your job is the taxpayers, and so is mine, and I understand that, but I really firmly believe that if I take care of the employees first, they will take care of everything else, and we will have satisfied taxpayers. So if you're gonna, whatever you might do, I would ask that you get their pay, at least, and it's stair-stepped. I would like to see my jail administrator, Captain Harlow, be somewhere in that upper 90s range. After the whatever percentage you do, cash bump to get him up in that. And that's not gonna get him where he needs to be, but I understand that we can't maybe do it all in one time, so.
So as far as wage plan employees, you have 2 positions?
I have 3, a captain, 2 lieutenants, and I have I guess the administrative clerk, Jennifer, is also a wage plan employee. And I didn't look at her numbers. I talked to her today. I didn't look at what her specific numbers were. So, any other questions for me or anything? Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm P.J. Jennings, County Attorney's Office. I'm not going to say a whole lot. I'm just in favor of those wage plan employees, of which I have 2, Joshua, who works with you guys, and then Kathy Warner. I can't be successful in my role without those guys, as well as the other assistants and other support staff. You will be looking at my salary in a couple of weeks or whenever that comes up, and I can in good conscience ask you to support what we're asking for unless I'm fully supporting the highest amount of raise that you can give my wage plan employees today. And if that's 7% or higher, I don't know what it is. I was just listening upstairs. I'm just hoping you do that because I believe everyone here has stated, and I'll continue to say it, and I've always said it, I cannot be successful without those guys. I just can't. I can't function, I can't do anything unless those folks are successful. And the only thing we can really reward them with is their pay as a county employee. So I'm asking you to consider that. The McDonald's thing, I'm not going to count on that because
That's where I
it is what
worked
it is.
20
Everybody
years
else has
ago.
talked about it. But they deserve it. Bottom line, they deserve it.
I can bring up dental hygienists, rad
I get it.
tech.
I
Yeah,
get it. I get
Tons
it.
of positions at the hospital.
I do. I totally get it.
So,
But we're in a position now to reward our county employees, and that's the only thing we can do. We can't address those other folks. So I'm just asking you to consider that. They are worth it. They have made the county work. They show up every day. They do their job, and they do it because they love it coming here. They love supporting Woodbury County, and I think we need to show that back to them. Thank you.
Another thought. Pay attention to what we've done over the last couple of weeks. We're not taking a raise, and we're sitting here right now talking about a starting point of 4% of a raise for 1 year, right? You don't think they might come to the board next year when they do the same thing, and do the same thing again? Because let's do some math for a second. You do 4% this year, and you do 4% next year, you're going to end up further ahead than if we do 8% this year.
Matthew?
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
I forgot to.
But hang,
Well, write it down. I know Matthew had something there too. I was gonna.
Want me to go?
Go ahead.
So I just want to harp on again or emphasize the non-transitory nature of this inflation. Well, if it is, it's the highest transitory inflation in 40 years, which would indicate that for the last several months and years it's been increasing rather than not.
Meaning that it's here to stay, right?
Thank you. Yes.
For those of us who are slower in the room, so.
Thank you. This is also a across-the-board issue as far as the level of compensation around the county. I sit on the County City IT Commission, and they're having the same struggles. I won't get into detail, but those are relatively highly compensated employees that they're still facing those issues. This is, obviously for us, having a vacancy that remains open is more damaging than, say a restaurant of any type or any place that can close because they're a private sector employer. We need to have positions filled, and my biggest concern about the jail expansion and the ability to realize the revenue that we've been anticipating is not so much the cost that we've already committed. It's just finding and employing in the right timeline the staff. When I hear that there's openings and vacancies that have stayed open in other parts of the county. As far as the budget gap, I would just say the budget, reviews aren't over. This isn't the last meeting we're going to have on that. And as far as the point about unions, that's certainly true. That would come up. What I would say to that is, in my experience, typically union negotiations and those wage openers have been at slightly higher levels than wage plan for several years. And they've also been for multi-year contracts. So am I promising necessarily an exact duplicate of 7% would happen there, I don't know. But if it's a little bit less, then it would be in line with what those two groups have been, over time. I do believe that there's been that guarantee, and, we can quote the lower number as far as those contracts, but they typically have different levels. They typically scale up or scale down, and we normally appeal to the lower number, but there's been 3.5% increases, and in years the county employees have got 2.75 and things like that. So I would, just reiterate, this is an extraordinary time in the broader economy, and I don't want the inflexibility of government to bite us when we do need to make an adjustment, and it's, for all intents and purposes, a little bit late. So if I could, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make an amendment to the motion. I'd like to move an amendment to the 7%.
What'd you say, Matthew?
7% amendment to the motion.
Second.
So we have a motion by Ung and a second by DeWitt.
Have a comment?
Go ahead.
I appreciate your measured remarks. You said that inflation's not transitory, and I agree, meaning that it'll probably be here next year, in which case I can almost guarantee you that we'll be facing this again. And I agree as well that the unions will almost inevitably say, you gave wage plan 7%? That's an insult to us. That's a slap in the face to every single one of us. Do you know what we do? And you'll hear many of the same arguments. And that'll be 760,000 new tax dollars this year, but it'll be 760,000, probably more than that because it's compounding, right? Next year, because it's not transitory, you're going to hear the exact same thing. And you're going to hear remarks next year, if we can do a back to the future, that say, well, what did you do last year? Last year you did this, and now you're going down to 5%. We're setting the second and third order effects for, and I'll just say it again, this would be the largest tax increase since I've been on the board, and it'll be the largest tax increase since I think I've been in my lifetime. I didn't get on this board to raise taxes to the tune of $1.5 million just on wages over 2 years, when we haven't even really cracked the gap of the 1.9 million. And so that's where I can't be supportive.
But this board has supported but this board has supported in the past different wage plan increases that were above and beyond the CPI at the time. So
How many union contracts are open right now for negotiation on wages? None? How many will be open next year? How many the year after? And how many different contracts are there? Okay? If you want to be bold, whatever you vote on today, agree that you will open every union contract today. Somebody make a motion. If you want to be bold, right, and take care of them and do a 4.5% or 5%, then make an impact, because some of these union workers aren't going to get they're going to get 2.7 next year, and they're going to get 2.7 the next year because they've agreed to the wages. I told our union employees at Thanksgiving, you better draft a letter and get it to the board and ask them to open your wages only immediately, because your 2.75% raise is going to be a 3.25 wage cut. So you need to open it. And I said, and if they ask why they should do that for you, because if you take a 3.25 cut this year because of inflation and 3.25 next year, as a union member, you would be a fool in 2 or 3 years to not come and ask for a 10 or 12% increase. So you're right. I mean, they're gonna want to know and what that is. So I guess my thing is, if you care about them, all 400 of them, then be bold. Open up the contracts today. Say we're going to open up wage contracts for everybody. And instead of giving wage plan employees a 7% raise this year or whatever, 9 or whatever, we're going to set it at 4.5, and we'll open up all your contracts today. And we'll just renegotiate them all. this year.
I'm not
Let
going
'em-
to,
let
I'm
'em-
not going to advocate that or do that.
Well, of course, I knew that would
Yeah,
happen.
because we have taxpayers that leave this area too.
Sure.
We have taxpayers and working families that have been taxed to death.
So the last
And
thing.
so,
Yep,
so
go
when
ahead.
we have a contract and it's not something that's reopened, we don't go to advocate that we're going to reopen this to increase taxes by $4, $5, $8, $10 million.
So instead
out
of
of
doing
boldness.
what's right today, we're
It's-
going to worry and try and play the crystal ball for down the road. Take the crystal ball out of it and do it all today then. That's what I would say. The last thing I'm going to say, to compare the 5 of you taking a 0% pay on a second job is pretty unfair. This is not, for the other 400 people that we're talking about, it's not their second job. It is their paycheck that's supporting their family, okay?
All right, well, I think we should vote on the amendment. Anyone else on the board have a last point they want to make before the roll call? All right, go ahead and call a roll on the amendment.
DeWitt?
Aye.
Taylor?
No.
Aye.
Wright?
No.
Ready?
No. I think if there's anything left to be said from the board on the 4%. All right, well,
I would just again point out that to ask us to try to cover this, to make up this ground in 1 year, that's not responsible thinking.
all right.
It's
Well,
irresponsible, but you can take care of this gap over the course of 2, 3, 4 years.
I have to say something. Are you
is-
guaranteeing you'll do that next 3 or 4 years?
I won't be sitting here next year at this time.
I think you gotta treat this year as what inflation.
But again, look at the decisions that have been made.
and just-
The discussion that's taking place.
we're not saying anything new here. And we could do this all night. So I'd like to see a roll call vote.
On 4%?
DeWitt?
No.
Taylor?
Aye.
Nay.
Wright?
Aye.
Ready?
All right. Thank you, everybody. We do appreciate your input. We do appreciate what you do. Moving on to item 15,
Got a
Board of
funny way of showing
Supervisors.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request from John Torbett, and John Torbett asks us to weigh in on the U.S. EPA's attempt to implement a new federal regulation concerning waters of the U.S. And so the public comment period is open, so I appreciate your last-minute revision of the agenda to ask if we could make a comment as a board. I think that this is an overreach by the U.S. EPA and something that we can do during the open comment time period. So I'd like to move that we have a comment that's submitted by Woodbury County that says, "We urge you not to implement the proposed waters of the United States rule. It potentially takes decisions we are required to make to keep our drainage infrastructure in good condition and transfers that authority to a state bureaucracy. While the proposed rule is supposed to add clarity and understanding, it does exactly the opposite."
And so I'm going to bring up, we had a discussion with Joshua that there's a good cause to add this to the agenda in the 24 hours due to time sensitivity of the meeting taking place and getting our input in there in regards to the waters of the United States rule. So
I appreciate it.
that was the reason. Thank you, Karen, for reposting everything. It was a little extra work. I will move this.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. Anyone else to have any questions on this?
So this is a rule that has come up a few times, right? Different times?
Yeah, I think it was rescinded, or much of the provisions under a previous EPA director administration.
And as far as how this is done, is one of us or the board office going to go to this website and put in this remark that's recommended? Instead of saying a name, it would just say Woodbury County, is that?
Right, or the Woodbury County Board of Supervisors, so.
Okay.
I thought about doing it in an individual capacity, but thought maybe it'll carry more weight if it's from the board collectively.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
All right, any other questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. So are you going to go on there and do that as Woodbury County? Or?
Karen said that she would.
And if it doesn't let us put in Woodbury County, I guess you can put in all of our names separately. I don't know how that works.
Thank you.
All right, report on committee meetings. Anybody?
At Rolling Hills meeting, Mr. Chair, it was good to reconnect with those folks. One of the things that we talked about, of course, I mentioned what they set for their employees, our employees. One of the things that we talked about with is making sure that all of our employees, that we are the employer of record. And so that may come before the board once the 2080 agreement is ratified. Is that the right way of saying it? So just to reiterate, that's presently what they are, but they want to have that assurance. And so that's all I have.
Okay, and then moving on to citizen concern round 2. Come on up.
Deb Main, 1026 Charles Avenue. I just wanted to let you know that Summit has filed for their pipeline permit as of Friday. So that starts a 1-year period where the IUB has to rule on their granting or denying the permit, and they have asked for eminent domain. So I would like to say that we have asked the board to hire an independent inspector. We asked you to file an objection on the IUB, and then you filed one in opposition to that pipeline and other pipelines and eminent domain. And we had surveyors in our community last weekend, and Mr. DeWitt kindly checked on the regulations for that for us. So I would like to thank the board for their support, and I hope I speak for myself, and I hope for all the landowners in Woodbury County that you've been very supportive in opposing the pipelines. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Area solid waste, I know, is one that we've been discussing getting to meet. So February 15th, we have our county conference board meeting here at 6 o'clock, which it'll just be the public hearing and approval of the budget. So if we could reach out to those members of the area solid waste to meet at 6:05 p.m. I've asked Joshua to be there already. We're going to definitely look over the 2080 agreement and figure out how we can get this thing running right and getting checks paid so that that's all.
Yeah,
Yes, go ahead.
I've written about $6,500 worth of checks that I sent to Jeanette, who's the secretary, she's holding them for now because we have nobody sign them, so it's imperative we get this thing rolling.
So who is it that normally calls those meetings? And
Jeanette.
Jeanette?
I'll give her a call tomorrow, and we got set time on what, 6:05?
Does she have the ability, so I know that, like when Simcoe sends me out a meeting, it goes right into my calendar. Does she have that ability to also do that for people? Because
I think we would, though. Do we have that ability? We do, yeah. I don't know if she does, because
Well,
she's clear out in Pearson.
maybe we do that for her so that everybody's,
All the mayors of the cities that participate, there's some that don't. I think Hornick and.
Well, most of those mayors are going to be here anyway that night, but it'll give them double the, reason to be here.
Why you got them captured, you need to do it.
Exactly. So we'll have a majority. If we need to make a change to the 2080, it can be done. I think that's the best way to go about getting this taken care of. Anyone else?
the board has 2 representatives, right? And then each,
Yeah.
I think we have 2, and it's Justin and
Rocky.
Rocky, okay.
And I think you actually both have to be present on for the quorum or whatever, and in that 2080.
That happened for a while.
Right. I
But
think,
they can't be blamed too, because all the mayors weren't showing up either.
Sure.
We're lucky if they had 2 people show up out of 8 or 10. That's not the way to run it.
well, see, nothing else on that. Okay, that was citizen concerns.
Conference board tomorrow?
Conference board is tomorrow, so we're doing board concerns. Conference board tomorrow, I'll be there. Who's our second?
I should be able to.
All right, so me and Jeremy. We have ISAC, February 10th, register by this Thursday. Anybody going? Be a good one if we could get one person there. I have my tax appointment that day. Thursday, February 10th. It's all day, I think. The
It's the
entire
same,
day. It's in Des Moines, so.
Same night as the Farm Bureau for anyone that was intending to go to that.
Is that on that day?
I think so.
I don't think it is.
Thursday's, next Thursday, isn't it?
Thought so.
I think so.
Oh, I don't have Farm Bureau on there.
It's probably important to have maybe a supervisor go, because there's in this bill that one of either the House or Senate has proposed for this income tax restructuring. They also have in there where they're gonna take lost away from all the counties and cities, and to redistribute it as a state sales tax. Well, we know how that goes. That changes as soon as they get their hands on the money, it changes. They need to leave it the way it is. But that's gonna be a big issue that a lot of people don't even know about yet.
It's a Senate version, right?
I think it's the Senate version, yes. Where the House won't touch it. So they gotta leave it alone, because we depend on that quite a bit. If we don't get it, secondary roads are gonna go about $1,000.
I can't commit.
I don't know if I can either. What's the deadline? You said
It's by this Thursday, the 3rd, to register to be there on the 10th.
I'll let you know if it changes.
Last one, Mr. Chair, is anybody planning to go to Washington, or I'm not.
I'm not.
No.
Okay.
Then on the other discussion on the CTI upgrades, has been pushed back to May or June estimated for the equipment arrival. Again, I know how to sympathize with that, since I still have orders from January 21 not in. But any other discussion on board concerns? All right. What?
Next week, we really don't have anything on the agenda for budgets, but I have a couple here we need to go back and review because I found out new information. One is example on the supervisor. We did pay one bill twice in 1 year, so we could knock $7,000 off. One dues came back $640 higher than we had in the budget, so it's just minor stuff to do. But I'll come back with a recap of where we're at presently, without sale of farm or anything, where we're at. So we know where our taxes are, our tax rates, and things like that.
All right.
I just want to make sure we have enough time to discuss the farm in the closed session, so I don't know if you want to give 45 minutes. It's a big topic.
I don't think that'd be a bad idea. I'd start the regular meeting at 4:15.
All right, so.
I'd hate
that
to
we
just
had a
cut it
motion and
short.
second, though. We'd have to have a motion to reconsider it.
No, I think,
No, just move the regular meeting to start a little later,
Oh, okay.
15 minutes later if that's.
Yeah, but we had a set time at 4:05.
We do?
Yeah.
what was that for?
Sale of property, wasn't it? No, it was something with David. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we can get it in a half hour.
All right.
There's a lot to discuss
Can we,
on that sale, though.
Pat,
You can have
need
a-
the look that says that maybe we could
You
make
can
it
have a
3:15?
motion. Yeah, you do a motion to reconsider. You have to be on the winning side, which it was a 5-0, so anyone can make the motion.
I'll move to reconsider.
I'll second. So motion by Matthew, second by Raddick to do a reconsideration on, what was it, 13B to, all right, so we'll vote on you got to vote on that motion, and then we'll make a new motion as to the new time. So all those in favor of reconsidering, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Motion to have it set at 3:15.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Ung. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. I'm not going to ask again. We're adjourned.
Only one chips.